The biker felt the tug before he heard the voice. It was light, barely there, like a leaf brushing leather. He'd already passed the bench when the old man's fingers caught the edge of his vest, just enough to stop him. The biker turned, expecting an apology, maybe a request for directions. Instead, the old man looked up with watery eyes and asked a question so small, so quiet, it almost got lost in the hum of traffic. "Son, could you read me a letter?" The biker hesitated. He was built like a storm, broad shoulders, road-worn boots, a leather vest thick with patches that told stories most people crossed the street to avoid. He wasn't used to being asked for gentle things. People asked him to leave, asked him to move his bike, asked him if he was trouble. They didn't ask him to read. The old man held out an envelope with both hands. They shook, not from cold, this was late summer, but from something deeper, something heavier. The envelope was creased, the corners soft, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. The return address was written in a careful hand that felt older than the paper itself. The biker glanced down the sidewalk. He had places to be. The club was meeting up at the edge of town. Engines would already be rumbling, waiting, but the old man didn't rush him, didn't plead. He just held the letter out, hope thin as glass, eyes fixed on the biker's face like this was his last try at the world being kind. "Sure," the biker said, finally surprising himself. "Yeah, I can read it." The old man exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all day. They sat on the bench together. The biker noticed things as he took the letter, the way the old man's clothes hung loose like he'd lost weight and never found it again. The scuffed shoes. The hospital wristband still looped around one frail arm, faded but uncut. "You want me to open it?" the biker asked. The old man nodded. "Please." Inside was a single sheet, folded neat. The biker smoothed it out carefully, suddenly aware of how loud the world felt around them, cars whooshing by, a siren somewhere far off, laughter from a cafe across the street. He cleared his throat. "Dear Dad," he began. The old man's shoulders stiffened. The biker kept reading. The letter was polite, careful, the kind of letter written by someone who had rehearsed it in their head 100 times before putting pen to paper. It talked about time, about distance, about how life got busy. It talked about forgiveness without actually saying the word. And then it said the thing that made the biker pause. "I hope you're doing well. I heard you were in the hospital again. I wish I could come, but things are complicated right now." The biker looked up. The old man stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Want me to keep going?" the biker asked softly. "Yes," the old man said. "Please." The rest of the letter was shorter. Ended with a signature. No address, no phone number, no promise of a visit, just a name. When the biker finished, he folded the paper back into the envelope and handed it over. The old man didn't take it right away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, the old man said, "Thank you." His voice cracked on the last word. The biker nodded, not trusting himself to say much. He stood, adjusted his vest. "Take care," he said. As he turned to leave, the old man spoke again. "Son." "Yeah. You're the first person who's read to me in, well," he swallowed, "in a long time." The biker walked away, but the words followed him like a shadow. By the time he reached his bike, his chest felt tight in a way the road never fixed. The club noticed something was off the second he rolled in. "You look like you swallowed a nail," Razor said, leaning against his bike. "Just tired," the biker, Miles said, cutting the engine. "You don't get tired," another member laughed. Miles didn't laugh back. That night the road didn't help. The wind didn't clear his head. Every mile he kept seeing the envelope, the shaking hands, the hospital band. By the time he pulled into his place, he knew he wasn't done. He went back the next day. The bench was empty. Miles stood there longer than he meant to, scanning faces, feeling ridiculous. He checked the hospital across the street. Volunteers at the desk shook their heads. No one by that description today. On the third day, he found him again. Same bench. Same clothes. The old man smiled when he saw Miles, like he'd been expecting him. "You came back," the old man said. "Yeah," Miles replied. "I was, wondering if you had another letter." The old man chuckled softly. "No, just the same one." Miles sat anyway. They talked a little. The old man's name was Harold. He'd worked maintenance for the city for 30 years. Fixed pipes, doors, boilers, things people only noticed when they broke. "Family?" Miles asked, careful. Harold shrugged. "Had one, still do, I suppose, just not nearby." Miles didn't press. Over the next week it became a pattern. Miles would stop by after rides. Sometimes he read the letter again. Sometimes Harold asked him to read the newspaper headlines off a phone. Sometimes they just sat. One afternoon, Harold admitted it. "My eyes," he said quietly. "They don't work like they used to. Letters blur, words run together." Miles nodded. "That's rough." "Used to read all the time," Harold said. "Stories, manuals, letters." He smiled faintly. Now I listen to the world instead. Miles thought of the club, of loud engines and louder laughter, of rooms filled with people who watched each other's backs without asking. You got anyone checking in on you? Miles asked. Harold hesitated, then shook his head. That answer hit harder than the letter ever could. Miles told the club, not everything, just enough. Old guy I met, he said around a mouthful of coffee. Reads letters to him sometimes. Razor raised an eyebrow. You reading? Don't start, Miles said, but the room got quieter. Where's he live? Someone asked. Dunno, Miles replied. Bench by the hospital. Silence stretched. Alone? Razor asked. Miles nodded. Razor set his cup down. That's not right. No, Miles agreed. They didn't decide anything that night. They never did things like that. Decisions just happened. The next time Miles went to the bench, Harold wasn't there. He checked the hospital. This time, the volunteer frowned. Oh, Harold, he was admitted yesterday. Miles' stomach dropped. Is he okay? The volunteer hesitated. He doesn't have anyone listed. Miles didn't wait to hear more. Harold was smaller in the hospital bed. Paler, tubes snaked around him, machines humming softly. When Harold opened his eyes and saw Miles, his face lit up. You came, he whispered. Course I did, Miles said, pulling up a chair. You got any letters today? Harold smiled. No, but I could use a story. Miles swallowed. He reached for the newspaper on the side table and started reading, slow, steady, like the words mattered. Halfway through, a nurse stepped in, paused at the sight. Family? She asked quietly. Miles looked at Harold. Harold looked at him. Neither answered. The nurse nodded anyway and left. Miles kept reading, heart pounding, because for the first time he realized the truth. If he hadn't stopped that day, if he hadn't turned around, no one would be here at all. That night, Miles stood outside the hospital and called Razor. Yeah, Razor answered. He's alone, Miles said. Like, completely. A pause. Where you at? Razor asked. Miles looked up at the hospital lights. Think it's time the club met someone. In episode 2, the club shows up, and the quiet truth about Harold's past finally comes out.